So Mrs. Clemens, I'm sad that we didn't mention her in round one because
Okay.
she does need to be talked about.
That's fine. I agree.
So Mrs. Clemens, for those that don't know, she lived on 10th Street in the next block. She was a housekeeper sitting on her front porch, and she saw two men near Tippett's car just before the shooting. She heard the shots, saw the shots, and she ran out into the street and saw two men, the gunman and another guy across the street. The gunman waved to the other guy as if for him to say, go on, get out of here, And then they ran off in separate directions. That's significant because if there was another person involved, then, But anyway, she said that it was not Oswald. Oswald was not one of the men that she sought. And I want to read you, this is from Mark Lane's book, his last JFK book called Last Word. Quote, when shown pictures of Oswald, Mrs. Clemens said that he was not one of the two men she had seen. Now, this is very significant. Now, could this other person have been an accomplice? Possibly. Could it have been another shooter? Maybe, maybe not. Could it have just been another bystander? That's also possible. But it's a shame that we can't get eyewitness accounts to match up because she said she saw two men. And it's a big part of the Tippett case because we don't really know. We don't have a definite answer on it. She saw two men.
Jimmy Burt, Bill Smith, Domingo Benavides, Helen Markham, William Scoggins. Every one of these witnesses I just listed were out on the street when the murder occurred. These people saw the events unfold. All five of these witnesses, none of them, and I mean none of these five, describe a second man. How do they miss seeing the second guy that you want to talk about, Acquilla Clemmons supposedly seeing and waving off and all that stuff?
Okay, so as I said, again, it's very difficult and frustrating that we can't get eyewitness accounts to match up. And, it's very possible that these 4 or 5 other witnesses could have missed another man across the street because they're looking at the action, which is the squad car and the man right next to the squad car. Mrs. Clemens said she looked over and she saw another man across the street. So that's what she saw. So witnesses, they don't anticipate what's going to happen. It just happens. They're not looking for someone else. They're just looking at what the attention is, the squad car and the man. They're not looking across the street for anyone else. So that's a possibility.
Are you saying it's possible that Jimmy Burt, Bill Smith, Helen Markham, Domingo Benavides, and William Scoggins missed the second guy, but he was there? Is that possible? Is that what you're saying?
It's very possible, yeah.
Acquilla Clemmons, she lived at 327 East 10th, which she was like a housekeeper for the Smotherman residence. And in July of 1964, Mark Lane, he was on the Barry Gray show, and he said, we have a statement by a witness, and she was questioned by the FBI at my request. And this is what Mark Lane told, I'm assuming Barry Gray, on the Barry Gray show. But this is not true. Mark Lane was asked to release her statement, but declined. Now, in 1966, for rush to judgment, Mark Lane, in 1966, now keep in mind, in 1964, he tells Barry Gray, she was questioned by the FBI at my request. We have a statement by a witness. But in 1966, so 2 years later, when he's making his rush to judgment nonsense, Lane says that even though the FBI interviewed over 25,000 witnesses, they inexplicably failed to question Acquilla Clemmons. So which is it? Mark Lane directly contradicts himself 2 years later. So which one's true?
Okay.
And also, by the way, my point is that the FBI and therefore the Warren Commission was not even aware of Acquilla Clemmons. Everybody wants to talk about why didn't Acquilla Clemmons get called to testify? Because she didn't come forth. And here's the important thing to me. Acquilla Clemmons was interviewed by Shirley Martin. Okay, now she was, I think she was part of Mark Lane's little fact-finding committee or whatever it is they called themselves. And in Acquilla Clemmons' interview with Shirley Martin, she literally, there's no two-shooter story. And was probably just another witness. Okay, so The point is, in Acquilla Clemmons' interview with Shirley Martin, she makes no hint whatsoever that there were two killers or a killer and an accomplice. She just talks about a second man across the street. She doesn't even hint they're together, but Mark Lane wants to spin it and make it sound juicy and exciting and say Acquilla Clemmons saw the two killers split off in different directions or whatever kind of bullshit that he tries to spin off, when in reality, Clemmons told Shirley Martin that that these two men weren't even together. She doesn't even make any hint whatsoever. She doesn't even, in the slightest, does she even hint that this other guy was even involved in the shooting in any way whatsoever.
Wow. Okay, everything he just said was factually wrong. Okay, let's go down the list. First of all, I'm not here to stick up for Mark Lane or anything he said. I'm not here to do that, but let's look at the facts, okay? So you said the FBI did question Mrs. Clemmons.
I'm not saying the FBI did not interview Clemmons. I didn't say that.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, okay.
I said Mark Lane said it. So you're proving Mark Lane. Mark Lane in Rush to Judgment says that even though the FBI interviewed over 25,000 witnesses, they inexplicably failed to question Acquilla Clemmons. He says that in Rush to Judgment.
They did.
And now you're telling me that the FBI did interview Clemmons, which I already know.
The FBI did talk with Mrs. Clemmons.
So which one is? I'm giving you two different statements by Mark Lane.
Again, I'm not here to talk about what Mark Lane did. I'm trying to get to the actual evidence. I'm not here to stick up for Mark Lane.
You said it's frustrating for eyewitness accounts to not match up. Well, I'm sitting here telling you that Acquilla Clemmons is not an eyewitness. Of course, it's not going to match up.
Wow, you're saying she's not an eyewitness. Wow. Okay, so she was on her front porch and she saw this happen. You're saying she's not an eyewitness?
You know, I can tell you this in Rush to Judgment, if you've seen it, and I don't know, Chris, if you've seen it or not, but Mark Lane is laying out the scenario for her.
Now he's Mark Lane.
And Mark Lane is laying out the scenario for her, and he has her inside the house at the time of the shots. So was she in? I'm not saying she was inside the house, but was she inside the house or outside the house? And Matt, I'm asking you this.
So this is hilarious. So now Bill likes Mark Lane. Now he relies on Mark Lane. Anyway,
I'm asking you to tell me if Mark Lane is a liar or not. Is all I'm trying to ask you. Is Mark Lane a liar or not?
Bro, I'm trying to get to my points, but you're not letting me because we have a lot to unpack here. I have a lot to respond to about what you said.
Okay, before you get to your next point, just answer me one question. Is Mark Lane a liar or not?
In regarding to what?
It doesn't matter. Is he a liar or not? Has he
lied? I'm not here to stick up for Mark Lane. I'm trying to get to talk about what you brought up. And you're talking about
the entire Acquilla Clemmons case is because of Mark Lane.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. It's not because of Mark Lane. Several people interviewed her way before Mark Lane even got to her. That was Shirley Martin, Harold Feldman, Marguerite Oswald, Vincent Salandria, a guy named Johnson, Oral Gold. So a lot of people talked to her way before Mark Lane even got to her. The first people to find Mrs. Clemmons was Vincent Salandria and his brother-in-law, Harold Feldman, two great first-generation researchers. This is 1964, so this is way before Mark Lane even talked to her, which was 2 years later. Okay? So, no, it does not come from Mark Lane. Okay? It does not come from Mark Lane. I know you want to say it does, but it does not. Okay, you said that Mrs. Clemmons does not make it sound like in her interview with Shirley Martin that these two men were together, but I simply quote from that very interview. It was two men. So she said it was two men.
No, she made no hint whatsoever that the guy who had the gun in his hand was affiliated with anyone else at the scene. To Shirley Martin.
I'll post the transcript and the readers can read. Okay, so do you not believe that she witnessed the shooting?
I don't know if she did or she didn't.
Well, you said matter-of-factly that she was not a witness. You said that.
You said that it's frustrating that eyewitness accounts do not match up.
Sure.
And my opinion is very heavily that Acquilla Clemmons is not an eyewitness to the Tippit shooting at all.
Okay, that's not true.
What?
She was sitting on her front porch, and she saw it happen.
No, she didn't.
Yes, she did.
No, she didn't.
Yes, she did.
No, she did not.
Let's pull it up right here.
What are you pulling up some Acquilla Clemmons stuff, or what are you doing?
I am going to get the quote where she says that she was on the front porch. Okay, so she said, I got tired. Okay, so first of all, Shirley Martin, she interviewed Mrs. Clemmons on her front porch, okay? Mrs. Clemmons said, I got tired, came out here, sat down here on the front porch. I was just sitting out here. Okay? And she said and she said I saw some shots. I saw the shots. That's from Mark Lane's filmed interview with her from the raw transcript, okay? So she was on the front porch.
I didn't say she was or was not on the front porch. I said she's not an eyewitness to the shooting.
She just said, I just told you, she said, I saw some shots. I saw some shots. She's an eyewitness to the killing. I know you don't think so. So do you think she witnessed it or no?
No, I do not.
Wow.
Okay. Do we have anything else to add to that?
She was threatened.
Who threatened her? Who threatened her?
The police.
Who says that?
That comes from her interviews with Shirley Martin.
Exactly. It comes from her. Nobody threatened her. It's ridiculous.
Yes, let's read this. Martin, has anyone talked to you and told you not to talk to anyone? Yes, they have. Is that the Dallas police? Some of them. They don't allow me to say anything. I'm not allowed to say anything.
Yeah, but how's that being threatened?
If I can finish, not finished. Who's that? You mean the Dallas police? Some of them. I'm just not allowed to tell you. I can't tell you nothing. I'm not allowed to tell them, the Warren Commission, nothing. I'm not allowed to talk to anybody. Some kind of policeman talked to me. He had on a police officer's uniform, question mark. He had blue-looking clothes on. Cap? Yes. I'm not supposed to be talking to anybody because he said if I talk to anybody, I might get killed on the way to work. See, I live over there. Is that what the policeman said? Yes. And then we fast forward to 1966. Mark Lane asks her, Mrs. Clemmons, she says, he looked like a policeman to me. He did. Did he have a gun? Yes, he wore a gun. And did he say anything to you? He told me it'd be best if I didn't say anything because I might get hurt. He just said it would be best if I didn't say I had seen anything.
I'm still waiting to hear a threat.
I just read you.
That's not a threat.
Yes,
not a threat.
It is.
He's telling her to be careful. It's not a threat. And also, when
okay.
she says she's not allowed to talk about it, she's talking about her boss, the Smothermans.
No.
They don't want her talking to people while she was there house sitting for the elderly fellow that was there. They didn't want all these visitors and interviewers. She says, I'm not allowed talking to anybody. She's talking about her boss. I think that honestly, I think we're done with Clemens. We've been talking about way too long.
I'm almost finished with this. Mrs. Clemens says, he told me it would be best for me to don't talk. Did he tell you what might happen if he did talk? Said I might get hurt or someone might hurt me if I would talk. About what you saw? What I saw. Mrs. Clemens, how long after Tippit was shot did this man with the gun come to visit you? About 2 days. It was about 2 days. So yes, and I want to close this off with
Hey, Matt, before you close it off, let me ask you one quick question. Major League Baseball.
This is not an interview.
Major League Baseball. I have a point to make. Major League Baseball, the batter comes up to the plate, and the umpire says, hey, the pitcher's been kind of wild. Be careful so you don't get hit by a pitch. Is that batter being threatened by the umpire? No. Okay. No, the umpire's telling him to be careful.
Okay.
Not a threat. It's not a threat.
Okay, that's funny. Okay, so I'm going to close this off. I just read it to you. So I'm going to close this off with
you haven't read a threat.
Can I finish?
No, I'm just saying you have not read a threat. You've read an officer warning her.
It's not a threat to you, but it's a threat. Listen, I want to close this off with a quote, powerful quote from Mark Lane. This is from his last JFK book. Again, last word. Mark Lane says, quote, Mrs. Clemens, a heroic African-American woman living in the racist environment of Dallas in 1963, was warned by white Dallas police officers that if she told anyone what she had witnessed, that Oswald was not involved in the murder of Tippit, she could be killed. She told me, Wayne, that she was afraid, but said that since she was a religious woman, she believed that she must tell the truth about the death of a police officer. End quote. Next topic, please.